All right, we're back. Welcome back to the Comparing Clipboards podcast. I'm your host, Luke Lewis. I'm here with my co-host, Erica Chapa. Erica, it's been a while. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, hanging in here.
Yeah,
How are
we're
you?
just good. We're just hanging in there.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize to everybody. I think it's been like 2 or 3 weeks since we last
Yeah.
recorded. I know a lot of coaches out there are also teachers. That's super common. And with distance learning, these first few weeks of school have been crazy, like absolutely exhausting, trying to figure everything out. And, on top of that, we also want to say our thoughts are with everybody that's being affected by the fires. I know it's really big in our area. It's big across all of California. About 2/3 of the state's on fire. So, it's really affecting a lot of people. So with everything going on, we're glad to be back. We're here with our our guest, Kacey Jones. Kacey, how you doing?
Doing good. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for thanks for coming on with us. So, little introduction on Kacey. So, Kacey is someone I know really closely. We are friends from college. So she went to Fresno State and got her bachelor's degree in kinesiology with an emphasis in physical education. And she's also currently in her master's program to get her master's of arts in kinesiology coaching and PE option at Fresno Pacific. On the coaching side of it, Kacey gets to coach a lot of different ages. She's been a bitty sports coach for the city of Fresno youth sports for ages 3 to 4. So the itty bitties, that is bitty bitty. She also coached freshman boys volleyball at Roosevelt High School in Fresno. She is the current Firebaugh High School volleyball varsity coach, starting her third year this year. She also coaches swim at Firebaugh High School, starting her third year. She teaches PE there, as well as this is her second year being the athletic director at Firebaugh. So quite the resume. And Kacey is also, you've heard this before from us. We're young. We're trying to learn. Kacey is also our age. So it'll be a really interesting perspective. So Kacey, to start this off, as a young coach, how have things changed over the first few years? Because we all know that, us young coaches learn a lot from year 1 to even year 2. So how have things changed?
It's changed extremely, in my opinion. So I kind of went in like young and hungry. I still am, but I just wanted to like win. And especially because I went to the rival high school growing up. And so it kind of was another little kick like, ooh, I know this league. I know the area. Like, I'm ready. Like, I know we can do this. I know what the other team used to run when I was there. I was just young and hungry, but now I'm more, I want to say realistic, but almost like more level-headed of like, okay, like let's scout out the opponents. Let's see how we will actually do. Like, let's make obtainable goals. So that's like the main thing that has changed. But one of my favorite things that have changed over the few years is just when you come in as a new coach, the kids kind of like, they're kind of testing you. They're kind of seeing like, are you with it or not? Like, do you care? And so that first year, I feel like I was just kind of trying to prove myself. Like, I can do this. I know I'm young. Like, I was only 5 years older than the seniors when I started there. So it's kind of weird. But now it's like I have like built this trust with them, and it makes it completely different too. So
yeah, and fun fact, I didn't mention this, and obviously this wouldn't be on Kacey's resume, but
yeah.
I was her assistant coach her first year at Firebaugh before I moved back from college. So everything she's saying, I got to see first person, right? I was also part of that problem of we were a little too hungry in terms of setting goals and also seeing the kids, test and not sure what it was going to be. You see 2 young coaches walk through the door, kind of like, okay, well, what are they going to do, right? But it was a really interesting experience. I learned so much that year, being in a different league, as well as being an assistant. It really helped me being an assistant, watching you take over as a young coach. You know what I mean? Like, I got to see how the way girls looked at you right away and how it changed around the midway point, end of the year, all of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like, can you tell me, for example, I don't want to say it. What were some of the like unattainable goals you think that happened that year?
All right. Yeah. So you kind of talked about it in Shane's podcast a little, but I'm like huge on preseason meetings. And one of the things we do is we set goals for the season. So I was essentially like, they had never done that before there. Like, they were like, what the heck? Like, we've never set a goal. Like, okay. So I was just like, let's shoot for the stars. Like, you need to just like set it to what do you want? Like, what do you want? And so all of them said, well, we want a ring, Coach Jones, and it's like, cool. So Valley Championship was number one. And then it was like, I think after that we said like host a playoff game of some sort. And then we said win league. And then I think that was all we really put.
I remember correctly, I think somebody said sweep league too or something. It was just like total heat checks. Like, oh yeah, we're going to like mop the floor with everybody.
Yeah. And that team, we were coming in, here's like a backstory of it. They had only won 3 games the previous season. So to set goals that high, I mean, it's always amazing to shoot for the stars. And I still tell them, like, that's amazing that you want to do that. But there's a process to get to that point. And that's kind of what we needed to, like, step back and do. And that's what we learned from that first year, because once they knew, oh, we're not winning league, they all just kind of shut down almost. And then all the other goals went out the window because obviously we're not going to host a playoff game and go to Valley from there. So it was just kind of a learning moment for us, and I think the girls too. Like, I think we all kind of learned from it. So
absolutely, yeah.
And they did well that season. Like, we got, I think, 11 wins, Luke. So to go from,
I think it might have been 13, something like that.
To go from 3 to 11 to 13 wins, like, that's amazing in itself.
Heck yeah.
So it wasn't a bad team. It was just the goals that we just shot a little high with the goals.
Yeah, and I mean, those high goals, if that's the goal, then like, what happened didn't hit the goal, but that doesn't mean it was like an unsuccessful season. Like,
oh no, they
sometimes
I
think Shane put it perfectly about like, sometimes setting the goal as a championship, like that's not a real goal almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you gonna let, possibly like he says in baseball, right? Like, are you gonna let one high school baseball game determine if your season was successful or not? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those girls knew too, like, that we were successful that year. Like, they were happy with it, even though our goals weren't met. So, but yeah, last year, I guess. This year hasn't happened yet. Preseason meeting, postponed because, January.
Yeah.
But last year, I knew they learned from it because I had some sophomores on varsity, and even the ones that moved up to seniors. I was like, all right, what's our goals this year? And remember, we got to be obtainable, And so I think our goal was to win league. That was our top one. And then the next one was like beat Mendota, which is our rival. And then it was like beat Dos Palace, which is our other rival. And so we conquered one of the goals this year. So we beat Dos Palace. It was the first time in 8 years we had done it in a program history, which I was in high school the last time they beat Dos Palace. And then we didn't obtain the other 2, but we got second place in league. So it's like it went close anyway. So they were very much more obtainable than the previous year.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things that, in the moment when it's happening, they might be like, dang, like, well, our goals are out the window. But, when you really take a step back and look at it, because sometimes it's hard to, in that situation, like, you know what, we improved by 10 wins. Like, in a season where you have, I think, like, the average high school season's like 24 or 25 maybe, or 26, something like that. But, like, 10 wins, that's a lot. Like, that's not just like, oh, we got lucky for one more game this year and like improved by one game. It's, we made a significant difference. And yeah, I'm gonna pass this on to Choppa. I know she has a question. Sorry, I kind of just kept going there.
Yeah, sorry, me too.
No, that was good because I was like, dang. Like, you guys are right. And I find like you guys have this connection anyway because you got to coach together. So that's cool. But I guess coming in and taking over at a small school, what is the key to finding coaching success at a small school? Because I know you have your preseason meetings, and I mean, obviously you found some kind of success. You went from winning 3 games and like you're new and you turned it into something else.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say is your key to finding coaching success at a small school?
At a small school, like, we share a lot of athletes, which I think we'll probably touch on later, but the big thing is like building the relationships with the kids. Like, I think it almost helped that I was so young because I could relate to them. I could say, like, I understand what you're going through. I literally almost just went through that. So it was like building the relationship and then buying them in. Like, it helped that. I think it almost kind of helped too. I was from the rival school and I was like, look, I was on a successful team at that school. Like, we had made, big playoffs runs. We won league like 8 years straight or something. So it was like, I know what to do. Like, you just got to trust and listen. So it was just like building those relationships with them and getting them to buy in, which definitely didn't happen like right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with the first year, it took them a while. And then the second year when I started, it was just like, all right, let's go. One big thing that before I got there was they didn't do summer practices, which blew my mind. And so they were like, wait, we're starting in June? We didn't used to start till like the middle of July. I'm like, the middle of July? Oh, okay. Yes, we're starting in June. So I feel like just like showing that I cared too. Like, a lot of times, like, because we have to do a tutorial after school. So it's like an hour of them doing like homework or whatever. And during that time, I like walk around and talk to them, like, how's your schoolwork? Like, how's home? Like, and a lot of them would open up and talk. And so I got I'm close with a lot of them now, and just building all those relationships really like helped at a small school level because we see them all the time too. They don't get lost in a 3,000 school, type thing. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you're connecting with them, right? Like, one thing that I specifically remember from that year, and it's funny that you mentioned the like the tutoring or the what was it called again? The after school
Tutorial,
yeah. I remember like one connection I made with somebody was, you and I were talking. I think you called me on my way there and was like, I'm not gonna say what the girl's name is, but like, dude, so and so has like 4 D's and an F, like, and I remember being like, oh my god, I have to talk to her, and like just being constantly on her like every day about it, like, hey, how's English? Hey, how's math? Like, oh, I just don't get it. Like, and like, eventually, like that step where like she got her grades up, it was like, oh, so you care about me outside of the volleyball gym. Like,
Mm-hmm.
You're not like, I'm not just going to be irrelevant to you if I'm all of a sudden off this team. Like, stuff like that, I think is really big. And kind of a follow-up question that I wanted to ask was, you said buying in, like, and I know that we kind of had to deal with this a little bit, was, going from 3 wins for them to, a new coach. How much of that do you try to just like make them forget about what happened the year before? Or do you want to use that as motivation? Or is that just like a, hey, like starting over kind of a thing?
It's kind of a mixture of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know we went through like phases with them. First, we were like, don't remember any of it, just do what I say. That didn't really work because, I mean, how do you not remember that, And then it was like, I remember telling him, and Luke will remember this, but I was like, I need you to fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just fake it. I want you to like fake cheer, like fake be happy, like just fake it. Come on, like give me something. And that worked for some of them. Like, some of them it worked, but still not completely. And then it was like more of like, then it was like a combination of like, okay, Like, you learned from it. Like, okay, so especially once we were through like preseason and half a league, I was like, look at where you've already gotten. Like, why can't we get a few more? So it was kind of a combination at that point with all that.
You know, I remember sorry to go back to the summer workouts again that they hadn't done. I remember one time it was that first year and we didn't play very good at a tournament or a game or something. And you told them after, like, guys, you worked way too hard this summer to like have this kind of effort. Like,
yeah.
And I remember one of the girls who wasn't always bought in, but it like clicked to her at that moment. And I'm not going to use the exact language she used, but she's like, yeah, like we got up at freaking 5 a.m, like 4 or 5 days a week. Like, what the heck? We didn't do that for nothing. Like, and it kind of clicked. And I think that's a big thing for high school coaches too, is like having that kind of a year-round program if you can.
Yeah, and I think too, like you said, with when it clicked with one, it all of a sudden was like, she gets it. Maybe I should get it. Like, she gets it. Oh, okay. So it is that comes with time again. Like, it does not happen overnight. and that was very hard for me and Luke, because we would go home frustrated some nights, but like it's just it's a process, and nothing can happen overnight. You think of anything in your life, like going to school doesn't, like in college and getting a degree doesn't happen overnight. So obviously they're not going to get bought into you, this brand new person, overnight. So
yeah, I know you and I said this a lot that year, but I remember we had this conversation a few times that like, okay, maybe we're not hitting our goals, but this first year is kind of like there's a lot of big pills to be swallowed for them. Like, okay, this is different. We got to work hard. We have goals now. Like, and I think we forget they're kids sometimes. Like, they're not robots. Like, we can't just flip them into like working hard mode. Like, especially if they're not used to it, right? Like, oh, we didn't have summer workouts. Like, what the, like, yeah. But I mean, I'm going to kind of transition to a question I know Chapa has, is like, it's crazy to me because like I've been at a small school with you, and then being at San Benito right now, we're a really big school. And there's certain parts where you can tell, like certain parts of the season where you can tell a big school from a small school, like what's going on. And like, you know, for you, being at a small school, numbers are different. Like I think about, you know, the freshman team at San Benito, where we usually have freshmen is where at bigger schools.
What's
you have
a freshman team?
Exactly. And like at a bigger school, like freshmen, I mean, you know this, you've coached at bigger schools too, but like freshmen is where you have the most people trying out usually, because people tend to maybe not come back after they get cut, or maybe they find something else they like and they drop one sport. But I know Chapa has a question about in regards of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when there's an issue with roster size and you only have so many kids coming to try out, what are your goals for those who have never played before?
So when our first year is the only year that I've had this issue, thankfully. But that's kind of what I like told them the summer's for, because in the summer I go back to the fundamentals. I'm like, I don't care if you're a junior, you're a senior, or you're a freshman who has never set foot on a court. Like, I'm going to teach you the fundamentals again. So we would go through and I'd make them do the little step and hop and pass, like little things like that, like footwork for blocking. Like, we would go back to the basics for everything. And the seniors, like, especially this year, they're like, we're not going to do fundamentals, right? I'm like, yes, we are. Because I just want everyone to be on the same page when we start, no matter like what age we are. But last year I had to make cuts. I had 40 girls come out for 2 teams. I probably could have had a freshman team, but like we just like there's always like numbers where we lose because of grades or injuries or whatever. So we were going to have to keep like, you know, certain amounts, and the freshman team would have been like really bare thin. And when I was at Roosevelt, I only had 6 boys. and the whole season. Thankfully, only one of them got hurt at one point, and I was super stressed. I was like, you can't be hurt because there's only 6 of you. And so he would like start the game, and then the ref would let him like go off or whatever, and we'd play with 5. But anyway, I was like, I don't want to put anyone through that, so we just keep 2 teams. But yeah, it's mainly like we're all going back to fundamentals, like, and we're all going to do the same thing for a while. And then usually too, like towards the end of summer, all summer I mix them, but like mainly the end of summer, I'm like, I kind of start to know, okay, this is going to be my JV, this is going to be my varsity. And so I'll mix them and be like, okay, this senior is with 2 freshmen, like when we play games or whatever. So that way, like, if there's something going on, I'm like, hey, you're going to talk to them and tell them, you know, what they're doing wrong, or like help them out. So that way too, like, it kind of builds like a team family vibe, which small schools, we thrive off of that. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys do too, but we extremely do. So.
Yeah. And one thing, you know, obviously, like, I know the first year I was there with you, that wasn't the case with JVs, right? Having that many girls come out and stuff.
No, we barely had enough for 2 teams that year.
Yeah. And it was like in a situation where, I mean, granted, like, Dee is a phenomenal coach, the Firebaugh JV coach. She's intense and she's awesome. I love.
She's our head varsity girls basketball coach now too.
Nice. Yep. Wow.
Yeah.
And
we coach everything.
But you know, I know that you also did like it was a youth camp, right? For other kids. Do you think that helped you in terms of gaining interest from middle schoolers for, you know, in reference for someone that may be going to a new school that has numbers issues for tryouts? Like, how do you get those up?
So with COVID, I was kind of nervous because usually I go to the middle school and the principal lets me have like a lunchtime meeting. And I like meet with the girls, the 8th graders coming in, and I'm like, all right, here's our summer schedule. Like, here's what we're going to do. But like with COVID, I didn't get to do that this year. And so I was nervous. I'm like, I'm not going to have freshman numbers. Like, this is going to be rough at first. But I had that youth camp, and there was a ton of 7th graders that came, which were now 8th graders this past year or whatever. So because of that, they kind of knew who I was already. So they just kind of found my email and hit me up and was like, hey, are you going to do workouts? Like, we want to come. And then, of course, word spreads because they're teenage girls. And so I feel like, yes, the camp saved me. Like, the camp absolutely saved me this year because of COVID. But it did help, too, for me, like, to see what levels I had coming up. So, like, I knew some girls already, because a lot of times we're teaching girls how to, their freshman year, how to overhand serve. And so I already knew, like, some girls, okay, they can overhand serve, like, no problem. Or like, man, she's already like a good passer. Like, okay. So I was able to already take notes. Like, I know kind of what I have coming in already before I even have it. So it's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, with Dee, like, I know Dee's not here, but like, I actually did like take a lot of things from that, like, one season I had where Dee was in the same gym as me. With that I have when I'm with younger levels, is Dee definitely holds them to higher expectations than, you know, what the other coaches at that level do. And I think Chapa and I both did that at freshman this year. It was kind of like, hey, like, you guys are good. I'm not going to hold you to this super low bar. And I mean, as a varsity coach, does that help you when they come up?
Oh, so much. I tell Dee all the time, if you ever stop being my JV coach, I'm going to like beg you and say, what do I need to do? Because she has helped me so much with, by the time I get them, they already know. Like, I don't have to worry about any discipline issues. Like, if they have issues on JV, like, they usually don't come up with me type of thing. Nice. So she puts them in check before they even get to me. And a lot of girls, like, not a lot. When I say a lot, it's like 1 or 2, you know, a season maybe. They will say, Coach G's mean. Like, I don't even want to play volleyball anymore or whatever. And it's like, cool, then don't play. Like, I have that attitude because I know I have numbers, and I probably shouldn't because we're a small school. But I mean, I want to win. Like, I'm still that young hungry. I want to win. So if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. And I appreciate her for it.
Yeah, and I mean, now that you're an AD,
Yeah.
you definitely get to like look at different coaching perspectives that like, I mean, that's something that, you know, Chapa, we aren't ADs, so we never even think about that, right?
Yeah, seriously. And I think it's funny because you're like comparing your JV coach and saying like she's passionate and all this. And this is something Luke and I talk about, especially because this past season, our JV coach, he like started going to school. So he had to like give us his notice that he wasn't returning this coming season.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke and I were like, oh my gosh, I wonder like if one of us can coach JV. And I was like, dude, I'd need you as my assistant, like no matter what. I'm like, cause like we just have this like, well, you know, he's a great assistant.
Yeah.
And I told him like, okay, Luke, don't take this in a weird way. Don't take this in a you can't be a head coach way, but like you are the best assistant coach ever. Like he saved my ass like so many times. Not that I did anything wrong, but I was like, Luke, I need your help. Luke, I need this. Luke, what do you got for this? And he's just like 100% like on your side. But one thing we talk about is like, as a JV coach, it just feels like your job is to totally prepare them for varsity, you know? But like Luke said, we don't like, we're talking as coaches and as like what we want our program to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you're in this AD position where you kind of, not that you get to decide in a sense, but you get to overlook people first. And I'm assuming you're a good judge of character for that reason, obviously with resumes and all that. So as an AD, what qualities do you want, or like, what do you look for in your coaches?
I mean, I don't want to be selfish and say like similar to me, but like there's a lot of coaches who are very passionate, just like I am, like that coach at the school I'm at. And so I just kind of like to see like the balance of passion, but yet organized. I love to see organization.
Heck
like
yeah.
As an AD, there's so much paperwork. You guys have no idea. Like it's insane. And the more organized you are, like we just got, and we just hired a new head football coach, and I almost like cried because he sent me this spreadsheet and there was like 20 different tabs on it. And he's like, yeah, everything is on there. Like my defensive plan, my offensive plan, my roster, my spirit pack sizes. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, so yeah, little things like that. Organization, like the passion, of course, like being like respectful of the kids. I guess that's how I'd say it, because like we all share athletes. That's a huge thing there. And we're a small town, we're a small community. Like we thrive off of family, and whether it's our team as a family or our actual family. So just simple things like that.
I mean, this kind of popped in my head right now, because even though San Benito, the school we coach at, it's kind of unique because we're a big school, but we're really not in a big town. Like we have a lot of the, you know, if something happens, word gets out pretty quick around town. So like, how do you like kind of put out the fire a little bit, like when stuff starts going? Because I know in small towns like that, you know, if there's an issue with a coach, like it gets around pretty quick, right?
Yeah, it does. And you're always gonna there's always gonna be fire. Like you can't put it all out. That's what I've learned like this past year, and what is it, half almost being AD. Well, starting year 2, but it's you can't put all the fire out. And the main thing is to just like go to the source, like whoever they say it's coming from, and straighten it out and say like, come on, like don't be like that. Like we need to be professional. Like I mean, and if a coach, like say they like flip out in front of or they get teed up at a game and it gets spread, the big thing is just calling the coach in and being like, come on, dude, like we can't like show that image. And a lot of times that's all it takes is like one conversation. So just having conversations with the coaches and making sure like, you know, we're on our best behavior and trying not to make a spread of anything. So
Yeah.
Like I know our AD, Todd, I think one of his best qualities as an AD is he does support his coaches a lot. Like
Yeah.
you definitely feel like he has your back. Definitely. But you also have to hold up your end of the deal, right? Like, you know, be honest with him. If you have, you know, he's always big on us on being very clear with contracts and expectations with the parents, because, you know, as he says, like, if you don't have anything for them to sign, I can't really back you that much. Right.
Yeah,
Like
that's
he
a
can't,
huge
like
thing.
he tries, but it, you know, he lets us know that having that signed expectations is what really makes it easier for him to help us out.
Yeah, and it's like you need to follow, like, you know, our expectations too, like as an athletic department, because, like, you know, there's certain things that happen and it spreads, and sometimes it comes back like that's my fault, and it's like, fine, I'll take the blame for you, but like you need to, you know, step up and do better next time, type of thing. So there's certain times I always like defend them, but as for taking the fall, it's kind of like you got to pick and choose your battles, type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, clearly, like, you have your relationship with your coaches, you have your relationship with your assistant coaches, even your JV coach, right? Like, you talk to Dee a lot. I know she sits on your bench during games. And, you know, relationships with players as well. And, you know, how much do relationships play into a team's success, in your opinion?
relationships are huge. Like, so one thing, like me and our football coach now, he was our offensive coordinator last year, but he's our head coach now, but he's the other male PE teacher. We thrive off relationships with the students. Like, we see them in PE. Like, I see every single freshman every day. And then I see about half the sophomores. He sees the other half of the sophomores. So we connect with the younger kids, and then the older kids, he has some of them in weights too. So it's just it's huge to have relationships with the kids, because like that's how they build trust with you. Like, they're more likely to listen to you. And again, like I was talking about before, like I'm really close with my like core varsity group. But even my JV girls, because I have them in class, I can be like, hey, so like, good game last night. Like, little things like that you say to them, like, it just makes them want to perform for you almost, like, which is crazy. But I mean, hey, whatever works.
And, you know, it's kind of funny that you said that, like, they'll perform for you. I'm not claiming that this show is like a display of like how you should talk to athletes or like how you should coach. Like, obviously there's a lot of controversial stuff, and yeah, anyone that is like easily offended by bad language, I really wouldn't recommend this show. But Last Chance U is a show on Netflix where the best kind of some of the best junior college programs get, you know, D1 players that got kicked out or got out for grades, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're pretty rough on them, and there's a lot of foul language and a lot of, you know, not exactly stuff you might want to take to a high school, but, you know, we have different groups.
Yeah.
But one
Grades.
quote is,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, it was like, so a quote from there that reminded me of right now is one of their coaches said, like, it really isn't about the plays as much. Like, it isn't about being a great play caller. You got to be able to convince the kids to buy in, and they'll run through a wall for you and take it in.
Oh yeah, like that's literally it. And a lot of kids, so we always, like, especially now that I'm AD, I always, like, after first quarter progress, I'm like, okay, here's all your kids' grades, like, and I highlight them. These are the ones that are on, you know, they're on the border. These are the ones that are already, like, they are going to get kicked off if they don't get them up. So when we highlight them and we hand them to the coaches, and then the coaches from there, like, we're all on the same page of like, hey, like, come on, let's get them up. Like, this is what tutorial's for, you know, we're here to help. And most of the time, like, I'm always on them. I'm like similar to like what Lucas said, but I've gotten to the point with some of them, like even kids that like as AD that isn't even my own athlete, if I know like they're, you know, like they need sports. There's certain kids, they need sports. And so I'll email them did you turn in your English assignment today? Did you did you let, Mr. Baroni know that you were at a game, so that's why you didn't do the quiz? Like little things like that. I'm like, come on. So it's just, again, I think knowing like someone cares about you too, because like some of these kids, like they'll go home and they still have to like cook and clean for their family on top of like school and sports. So it's just nice to have someone extra besides their family who cares too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And, we're talking about everybody has different groups of kids, right? Like you may see some huge schools that have like primarily one sport athletes. That's where Hollister kind of is a little different, is like, I mean, we don't have anything to do here, so kids just play sports growing up. But like, I know you have a lot of multi-sport athletes, even to the point that one thing that I really admired about those girls the year I was there was in the summers, I didn't realize how much they were doing.
Yeah.
Like it was like insane. Like I felt like a majority of the girls were volleyball, basketball, softball. That was like a very high 3-sport thing. Mm-hmm. And they would go from volleyball workouts at 7 a.m.
Maybe to basketball at 9.
Yeah, basketball at 9. Go home, maybe take a little nap and maybe get a snack, and then go to softball. Mm-hmm. And then some of them even took like college classes in the evenings too. And it was just like, oh my God, like, are you guys taking care of yourselves? Like, when do you sleep? Mm-hmm. But anyways, like those multi-sport athletes, like what impacts do multi-sport athletes have at small schools?
On the girls' side, I would just like to shout out the girls in small schools because they are what keep girls' sports alive in small schools. Like we, with the whole CIF changing it because of COVID and somewhat combining winter and spring, it's going to hurt our girls' programs. Like we're not going to, as a school, we decided we're not going to make them choose. But there's still going to be some that are going to choose because it's going to be tough. Like they're going to have 4 games a week on top of 2 practices. Like it's just going to be crazy. But on the girls' side, they are what keep our sports alive. Like literally for softball, I know the head coach really well, and she literally waits until basketball playoffs are over to start her first game, because if she doesn't, then she'll only have like 5 girls.
Yeah, she won't have enough for a team.
No, so she has to wait until pretty close when playoffs are done. Sometimes she can cross a little bit. And then volleyball to basketball isn't really huge because we have like somewhat of a break. We have a couple weeks, but yeah, it's huge for the girls' side. For the guys' side, it is still big. We kind of discovered how many we had when we were making pods this summer, because my school opened it up. We opened it up to all athletes that wanted to go back, not just fall. So there would be kids that would do, a football workout, then wrestling, and then, baseball didn't do it, but they would also play baseball type of thing. So it was interesting to see just how many we had. Like I knew we had a lot, but I just thought mainly it was on the girls' side, but it's on the guys' side too, because you think about how many guys play football. So just think about how many spread out in the winter and the spring. So, and if it's not 3 sports, it's definitely 2. Like usually if you're not a 3, you're a 2-sport athlete. And that's just how it is. They either choose fall, winter, or it's usually fall, winter, or fall, spring. So, but it's a huge impact on us. Like without multi-sports athletes, a small school would only have varsity teams. Like that's essentially the impact it has. Like, and that's what we might cross this year with COVID. Like we might have to cut it to where we only have varsity squads this year for certain sports, just because of numbers and, kids choosing. We don't want them to, but I mean, we also understand. So
yeah, it's gonna be a huge Shane said, we've mentioned Shane a lot. Shane,
hi Shane.
Yeah, hi Shane. Shane mentioned that he has a really good relationship with both the basketball and the football coach at CVC, and they really work well together. Obviously they don't coach together, but they share a lot of athletes and they acknowledge that. And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us are going to have to, swallow our pride a little bit and like acknowledge like, hey, we might have to share, or hey, this kid is really serious about this sport. He or she may not be playing for me this year, and it's not personal. Like, trust me, the kid doesn't want to be in a position where they have to choose either.
Yeah.
Like,
for us, the girls' side, it's probably going to be pretty easy because we're used to sharing. But a lot of the boys, in certain sports, I'm not going to say which ones, but like they do individualize at our school. And so, and then those few that don't, that's where there's going to be like a little battle. So it like you said, we're all going to have to work together now because that's just how this is going to be. So.
mm-hmm. And one thing, this is kind of a little off track, but because it was really cool because I went straight from Firebaugh to San Benito. So it was like small school to huge school. Like it wasn't like I went to a medium-sized school in between. And, one thing that I noticed that a lot of coaches I don't think about is like the transportation situation is a lot different for you guys. Like I know like Chapa and I, like with the freshman team, we had usually what would you say, like one or two girls that would need a ride home?
If that, I would say like that was only, I think that there were 2 tournaments where like we didn't need to take anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That was maybe like 2 out of
home. We had yeah. Even like when we have games like out of town, like JV, freshman, varsity, whatever, like we would have maybe like one from JV, one from freshman, and that was it on the bus. And it was like, but it like that made me like surprised every time because like I remember you and I like there was no option, right, of like, hey, I'll meet you there or whatever, right? Like how important is that for you with coaches with transportation?
I mean, for us, we kind of use it as a bonding time. Like the girls, like sometimes their parents, and I would do the same thing when I was in high school, so I have no room to talk, but sometimes like when the game would end and your parents were there, you were like, I'm riding the bus home. I'm stopping at McDonald's on the way home. Like we're gonna have ice cream because we just won, like they used it almost as like a social time. So
yeah.
And I didn't mind it. Like it was nice. On the way up, we'd always like it depended on the game. Like some games we would talk like strategy. Most of the time no, it was usually just like, all right, like how was school today? Oh, like little things like that. Or they'd listen to music, and then on the way home, they'd either sleep if it was a long ride, or it was like a dance party some nights. Like they would bring speakers, and it was like, woo, like it was, honestly, it's so much fun to me. And then when we do tournaments, we drive vans. And I mean, I'm not a fan of driving a van because I mean, usually the tournament is in Fresno. So I'm driving from Fresno to Firebaugh, taking a van with kids back to Fresno, driving the kids back to Firebaugh, and then me driving back to Fresno all in one day.
Okay. I'm sorry. I gotta interrupt there for any like young athletes listening to this. Like your coaches are dedicated, I promise you. Like I can remember that first summer with Firebaugh where Kacey and I both lived in Fresno, right?
Yeah.
And Firebaugh, for those that don't know, is what you say, like 45, 50 minutes away.
West, yeah.
West. So
Fresno.
We would drive from Fresno to Firebaugh, get in the vans, pick up the girls. We had summer league in Fresno. So they would get in our
apartment.
Yes. They would get in our vans and we would drive them to Fresno where we just were, play games for like hour and a half. Then we would get in the car and drive back to Firebaugh to drop the girls off. And then guess what we had to do? Get back in the car and drive back to Fresno. Like, I promise you your coaches care. Otherwise, they would not be doing this. We weren't doing that because we enjoy the Firebaugh to Fresno drive 4 times in a row. Like, seriously, I promise. But sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
It's okay. Some of those were like the best nights though, because we would come home. We'd always stop in Kerman, which is like a halfway point for us, and we'd eat dinner. And right there's a Taco Bell, Panda. There's a McDonald's inside of a Walmart, and there's just Starbucks. And so, and us Jamba Juice. So the girls were just nuts. Like they would just go eat, we'd meet back in like 30 minutes, Luke, something like that. And then like on the way home, it was like a karaoke sesh. Like some nights it was like they would vent to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And like I went from coaching freshman boys where they were like, Coach Jones, you have some food in your teeth, to like that was the most they ever said to me, personal wise, to like, Coach Jones, do you have a boyfriend? Like, tell us all about it. And it's like, you know, so it was like, it was different in that aspect too, like coaching boys to girls. But I mean, those van rides and those bus rides, those are like honestly some of my favorite parts of like transportation. Like, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, Luke and Erica, I didn't even know that's how you guys were over there. Like, I just assumed everybody was like us, I guess. Like,
well, I was gonna ask though, so do you give your girls the option to go home with their parents, or do they have to ride back with you?
Yeah, so they can go home with their parents. We sign them out. They have to like sign a sheet saying. So like when we play in Mendota, it's like 8 miles away from Firebaugh. So a lot of times that game, their parents will sign them out. But usually that's it. Like otherwise, we're taking home like full like buses. So.
Damn.
And
well,
like we don't have
ahead.
a lot of parents that go to away games. My shout out to my parents. My dad was retired my first year, and was it Tranquility, I think, Luke? Like when the girls pointed up there and was like, that guy is always at our games. Like, who is that? Whose dad is that? Whose dad is that? And I'm like, that's my dad.
Coach's dad.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we didn't have a lot of parents go to away games because our games started at like 5 o'clock, like when they're getting off work. So that we'd have a lot of home game support, you know, because they're right there. But a lot of times we wouldn't have parents go, and so we would have to bring them back. So
yeah, that's what I think some coaches need to realize if they're going into a small school, right? Like if I was going into a small school without having already been there, like I might think it is like it is with our girls program at San Benito, where not a lot of girls need rides home. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's really important to understand. Like in your situation, if everybody's getting off at 5 and the varsity game doesn't start until 6 in Avenal, which is a pretty good drive away,
hour and a half
within your league. Yeah. Like, you know, parents, you know, probably aren't going to make the trip to watch the last set and then drive back.
Yeah.
And so I think that's some advice, like coming from someone that was only at a small school for a year, like that's advice I would give, is be aware of that. That really has nothing to do with coaching. It has nothing to do with, you know, how to run a practice.
You guys brought that up because, again, like I've only really been in a small school for the most part. Like when I coached boys at Roosevelt, I never rode the bus because we always had another coach go for some reason. I don't know. I think it's because I had class or something when they left. But yeah, so it was just, I never rode the bus, and most of the time the boys would get picked up because their games are in Fresno, like they're down the street from where they live. So
yeah,
I guess you're right, but I never crossed my mind because I've always grew up in that too. So,
and it's like different too. It's so funny how programs like vary, because my boys program is, well, not my boys program, but the one I coach in, you know, it's more like you, where I have more kids going home. But girls, where there's even one more team, it's like the complete opposite, where we have 2 girls from 3 teams that need to get a ride home. And I think if anybody's going into coaching at a small school, they need to, you know, realize some of that reality of it. Like what else do you think from between coaching at Firebaugh and coaching at Roosevelt would you say? Because Roosevelt's, it's not like 3,000 or anything, but it's still much bigger.
It is that big, but it's an art school. So like they thrive off of theater, dance, music. So a lot of they don't have a lot of athletes. So that's why they are a bigger school, but they're considered a lower division because they don't have a lot of athlete pool. So
yeah. So with that, what else would you notice as like a difference as being at a smaller school compared to a bigger one?
I mean, of course, there's specialization. There was even at Roosevelt, even though the athlete pool isn't still that big, but there was specialization. So like you'd see a kid only play basketball. What I saw too is a lot of coaches also ran club teams at Roosevelt. Small schools, there's some coaches who are, they got time and they do it. And then there's some of us that don't. So either because the kids like can't afford it, or like we just don't have the gym space. That's one thing too. I mean, Roosevelt didn't have 2 gyms, but a lot of schools have 2 gyms. So we could practice volleyball in the winter. Like right now, I couldn't do that. Like there's basketball practices in the morning and in the afternoon. Like if I wanted to practice volleyball, it would be at 9 p.m. and that obviously is not happening. So I almost have to take time off in the winter for volleyball at Firebaugh unless I want to go to the middle school. So, but yeah, so it's just those 2 things, specialization, the travel aspect of it. I would say like there's a lot like more coaches there, I guess is how I would put it, because like with us, a lot of us coach 2 sports. A lot of us. I'm not kidding. Like
contract, right?
Well, it is for like a few of us, but for the most part, some do it just because they want to, like, because they like doing it. And so, which is amazing. Like, love people like that. But I mean, at Roosevelt though, like, there's also, I mean, there's also like a pay difference too. I'm not gonna lie. Like, small schools can't necessarily afford to pay coaches as high as a bigger school would.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of where they're gonna find more people to coach more than us too, because I mean, even like Luke, when he coached with me, he subbed. So that was like kind of his motivation to drive out to Firebaugh. Like,
right.
I had an assistant coach in mind from here in Fresno for this year, but they were like, I'm gonna drive 45 miles to get paid half of what I would like coaching freshmen at a Fresno Unified School. So it's like the coaches are almost in it not for the money at all.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm sure no coaches, because all of us get paid terribly, but I'm saying like at a small school we're really in it for the kids. I'm telling you, I promise.
Totally.
So I mean, those are just some of the differences. And then the kids are different. They're just different at every school, I feel like, though. So
yeah, it's just like
I always say I am blessed with the best kids for a small school. Like, I've been spoiled with a small school, and I never want to go to a big school to coach or teach, because I subbed in Fresno, and I mean, again, I was a sub, so whatever, but I would get like stuff thrown at me, and I'm a bigger girl, so I'm like, what the heck? Like, they'd cuss at me and spit, and then I get to Firebaugh, and the worst that happens is like a kid like says the F word, and it's like, don't do that, Jimmy, or whatever, like, so it's not, the kids are just different, and that's, there's like more of a respect in a small community too. So
yeah.
And is it what I remember that reminded me of, I know I'm kind of taking a trip down memory lane here. But like, I remember it was the summer, so it hadn't started yet. So you were hired to teach there, but you hadn't had your first day of school yet. We were just having summer workouts. And I remember one of the girls, so I won't mention her name. She knows who she is if she hears this. She was like, "Oh, Coach Jones, like the kids here are bad." Like,
I remember her saying that too. And I was like,
I don't know if you're ready. Like, they're bad. And you were like, really? Like, what's the worst thing that you've seen happen? She's like, they're bad. And then you're like, yeah, I think I've seen a little more extreme. So it's like and I think Hollister's kind of like this in a way too, where the kids are in such a bubble, like in terms of like, we're really just in our small pond. Like, there is so much more out there. Like, there's kids that'll be like, oh, I hate it here, blah, blah, this school sucks. I'm like, the school's giving you like a Chromebook, new facilities like every other year. Like, it could be a lot worse. Like, trust me, like, there's schools out there where you're like, well, there's like schools out there where you're like, you're worried that you're going to get beat up every day. Like, come on. So I think that's important to realize for coaches as well, is like, especially at smaller towns, smaller schools, I feel like sometimes they're even more in a bubble too.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they, which I remember it because I was friends with kids in Firebaugh, but like they're friends with kids in the nearby farming communities, a lot of them. And then like some play travel ball in like Fresno, so they'll have friends there or whatever, but they don't actually experience like transferring and going to a bigger school. So it's just kind of, I think I didn't even get it until I went to school in Fresno, like for Fresno State, and I moved out of my small little farming sheltered community, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's some weird people out here. I thought Dust Palace was weird and redneck or whatever, but then now I'm like, I kind of want to move back. Like, I need my small schools. I'm not afraid of my car getting broken into there. Like, yeah. So little things. I don't know. But
yeah.
Okay, so Kacey, before we let you out of here, if you had one piece of advice to coaches, what would it be?
My advice would be to trust the process. Like, I know I've said that like so much probably over this like, little meeting we have, but it's just huge. Like I learned that like over the past 2 or 3 years now, but there's a process for everything. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. When it either comes to buy-in, when it comes to wins, when it comes to like just getting like enough sleep. I would also like, big advice would be to like take care of yourself during season. I always like to call it the coaching like 10. I always gain weight during season because I stress eat. But I mean, take care of yourself too. Like, I mean, you harp on these kids, like you need to do it yourself too. So
that's so true. My coach, like, who, oh my gosh, I feel like I don't talk about her enough, but like my coach Mo from CSUMB, she would always like text us at like 6 a.m, which we were all up. She knew our asses were up getting ready for 7 a.m. practice. But she texts us like, girls, I've been up since 3. Like, my husband kicked me out of bed because I've been on my iPad watching film all night. And like, and this is the thing, like, God love her. She was always like, be healthy. This is what you should be eating. This is what you should be doing with your body. This is what you should be doing with your mind. Like, she was our mom, she told us like all of the healthy stuff that we should be doing. And we looked at her like, well, damn, she looks good, so I'm going to listen to her. Then she's telling us like, she's up from 11 to 3. She can't sleep and she's watching practice, and she watched 3 weeks of practice or something. And we're like, okay, but you're so right. Like, we don't think about that as coaches, because Luke and I had a conversation the other night. We knew we had to be up for our like coaching at 7 a.m, and we had a conversation from 11 to 1 a.m.
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
And it's just like, take care of yourself.
Heck yeah. I definitely, one thing too, sorry, side note, kind of going off that, is one thing we do like as coaches, some of the assistant football coaches, and I started doing it with them, but like we go into the weight room in the mornings, and so we like tell kids like, hey, we're here, if you want to be here, we're here. So like they see us working out, and so they're like, hey, like maybe I should hit 6 a.m. weights too, like with coach. Like,
that'd be cool.
It's just like, like you said, kind of helps with your buy-in with that too. So.
I had to check myself a few times, both the recent seasons, like both with Chapa and you. It's like, I remember with your team specifically, there was a couple that had like huge hot Cheeto addictions. And
I was just telling somebody about this today. Oh my gosh.
And I remember like, because we were getting tired of these girls being like, I don't feel good, and it's like, okay, we'll stop eating 3 bags of hot Cheetos every day.
Right before a game.
Shit.
And I remember like there's this one game that I think we were on the road, and I had class. I just met you there, and I was super hungry, and I was just like, it sounds so bad, but like I drove through McDonald's, and like I was about to get in. I was like, I'll eat it during the JV game, and then I was like, wait, no, I can't tell those girls they can't eat hot Cheetos and then walk in with McDonald's. Like,
Heck yeah.
and then I had to eat it in my car and act like like I didn't just eat like a bunch of crap. So yeah, I mean, setting an example is huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, awesome stuff. Thanks for being on with us. We love hearing different perspectives. We love hearing the differences in schools, everything like that.
I have a question. Sorry,
Okay.
Your
Yeah,
hands
go for
up.
it.
Yes, excuse me, sir. Question. I'm like, I've been stuck on this the whole time, but I didn't know when to ask, and I know this isn't the best time, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Who do you coach for itty bitties? Like, what sport? What is this?
We didn't even touch on that. I'm sorry. Go ahead and
I
talk
was
about
like,
itty
what
bitties.
is that? Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. So, I would like to thank the city of Fresno for like fueling my passion for coaching, because when I was in college, I was kinesiology, like exercise science option, because I wanted to do physical therapy. But I like decided, my dad worked in recreation, so I was like, hey, like I'm gonna get a rec job just as like a side gig.
Yeah.
And so I applied to be a coach for like 12-year-olds, like for baseball. And the lady, when I did like the coaching tryout or whatever, she's like, oh no, you're with the biddies. So I assumed 5. I assumed 5'6". So I'm like, cool, I'm in. She's like, really, you're in? I'm like, yeah, I'm in. She's like, cool, you're our supervisor. And I'm like, what? And so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But then, yeah, so it's 3 and 4-year-olds, and it was kind of more babysitting than anything. But I mean, we did t-ball, soccer, outdoor and indoor. We did basketball, and we did t-ball, outdoor, indoor. Yeah, that might be it. So, and then yeah, so I was gonna say rugby, but not with the biddies. Didn't do biddy rugby. But yeah, we did. Yeah, it was t-ball, indoor, outdoor, soccer, and basketball. And the basketball hoops were like this tall. It was so adorable. But it was kind of like we taught them extreme fundamentals. It was like, this is how you hold a bat. Run that way. Like, run to coach. It wasn't even like, it was like it was so cute though. Like the stories they'd tell me, I literally wrote them down because I'm like, I'm going to make a book one day because this is going to be gold. But they'd say some of the funniest things, and like, but it just made me realize like, oh my gosh, I love like teaching these kids how to play. Like, and so then it transitioned into like, I need to find an actual coaching job with like, bigger kids. But I still, to this day, like my supervisor will call me up and she's like, hey, we have somebody missing like this weekend for soccer. You want to cover a shift? And I'm like, you know what? Sure. Like, and it's so fun to see the little ones like run around out there. But yeah, and just so you know, like high schoolers also act like 3-year-olds sometimes. And I tell them that.
They do indeed.
I straight up tell them that. I'm like, you're acting like one of my biddy kids, so you better check yourself. So but they were the light of my life during college. Like, I loved going to work during those times. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked because I'm glad I asked because I was like, the whole time I was like, oh my God, like, I feel like, I'm not going to lie, when I got offered like, hey, do you want to coach 13s? I was like, no, thank you. I don't want to coach 13s. I would say
no thank you to that too, but
because like, what it's like, no offense, but like parents, too, like, I don't know how to get your kid to serve the ball over the net just because like she doesn't have that muscle developed. Let's go do some push-ups and some pull-ups. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. But I was thinking like, how the heck are you teaching 3 and 4-year-olds how to do this? I'd be like, we're not doing it. We're playing duck, duck, goose on practice. It's going to be the same result come game time.
Well, the big thing is it was just games. So there were no practices. Like the game was practice.
Oh, yeah.
And it was more of like, this like t-ball was my favorite, but it was like, this is how you hold the bat. Okay, now swing. Like they were hitting off a tee, obviously. And then it was like, okay, run that way, run to coach. But you had to do everything like extra. You were like, yay! and then like there were some kids who were like little,
almost like you're
brats.
training a dog.
Yeah, kind of. But there were some kids who were like, they were there because their parents wanted them there. And so you would have to make up stories. So there was one kid who got attached to me, and he like, I had to make up a story every game. So like one game he was an astronaut and we were going to the different planets. One game it was like he was a race car. So yeah, I had to get creative, and I actually wanted to teach elementary PE at first because of that job. But then like now that then as I was like, you know, going through the PE program and I like subbed and did stuff, and I was like, oh, I couldn't have that much energy every day.
Right.
So I want the high schoolers who are kind of sassy. So yeah. But yeah, they're fun. I love them.
I love
Heck
it.
yeah.
I love that we got the biddies in there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming on from Firebaugh to Roosevelt to itty bitties. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Loved having you. Thank you everybody that listened. Once again, sorry it took a while for another episode. Things have been pretty crazy, but if you don't follow us on social media, go ahead and give us a follow. On Twitter, it's Comparing Clips. On Instagram, Comparing Clipboards Pod, or you can email us at comparingclipboards@gmail.com. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know if you want to come on and talk to us. Yeah, just let us know what you want. We can get it going.
Yeah.
All right. See you later, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.